Yay Networks.
So if you've ever wished that you could walk through the grocery store, let's just say Costco, with a dietitian in your back pocket, this is the episode for you. A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. If you are tuning into this episode, I think it's safe to say that you also are a Costco fan, or at the very least, you're wondering, what is all the hype about? What is everybody always raving about what they're finding at Costco? Well, from a nutritional perspective, there's so many things at Costco that are not only budget friendly, they're also really fast, they're convenient, and they're also legitimately nutritious. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I'm all about, let's make things easy, number one, but let's also sort through the marketing hype and things that are often sold to us as being better for us. And then once we get down to it, we start kind of digging in a little bit, they're really not. A common theme of many of the products at Costco is that the ingredients are high quality. The products are held to a high standard. And so it makes it easy as a dietitian walking through there to find products that we would legitimately recommend to clients, to our listeners to this podcast. So recently a lot of times you're kind of in and out, running your quick errands. I just carved out extra time and I was like, I'm going to go through every aisle. I'm going to look at all the different products and see what really stands out that we can feature, we can recommend and spotlight. Some of these you may have seen. Some of these have been there for a while. I would say the main drawback about Costco, I think most of us can agree, is sometimes you get your heart set on something and you love it and it's your usual. You're going to Costco, you're finding it there all the time, and then it's discontinued. And sometimes they bring it back, but not always. So I'd say that's the drawback. So right now, as I'm recording this podcast, we're looking at, it's June of 2022. So not all of these products are going to be there for months to come, but right now, these are some of my favorite spotlights that I want to share with you all. So if you're hearing this, go check them out and let me know what you think. So when we go to Costco, I don't know about y'all, but there's sort of like a path that you tend to take, and it almost seems like everybody in there is sort of taking that same path. So for us, usually when we walk in, you go through the part where it's kind of like the home goods. You've got the electronics, the home goods, and you kind of keep going through that. Like you could buy like a gazebo if you wanted. And then the produce is in the section, at least at the Costco that we're going to often in New Orleans. Produce is first, so you go through there. I'm not going to go through pretty much everything in that produce space. Obviously would be products that we would recommend. And then you get to that seafood space. There's so much there. There's wild caught salmon, there's tuna, there's just so much incredible seafood. We don't need to go through that. I think, those are obvious there. There's also deliciousness that's always on our list. I want to make sure that we always have Parmigiano Reggiano in the household. So those are some that I love. It's, it's imported directly from the Parma region. It's just really good quality. So on the nutrition side, though, I'm going to start us really kind of diving in that refrigerated section. So the part where it's kind of open air, refrigerated space. And one of my favorites is the Kevin's brand products. We've actually had Kevin himself, on this podcast because the brand is just so high quality. So if you're not familiar with it, it's Kevin's Meals. They're paleo, which why that's important is the ingredients are just wildly simple. It's the ingredients that we all conceivably could have in our kitchen. And when he has foods like the Thai style coconut chicken, which is kind of a coconut curry chicken, or also currently at Costco, he has a chicken chili verde that's there. The quality of the chicken, this is something that I was like, how does this taste just like it came from a restaurant? It has so much care in it. There's no gristly chicken or anything like that. And I was like, how does this product, how do they even make it? People who are really particular, my husband included, who normally would not do a refrigerated or a frozen meal that you're kind of heating and eating, just they would kind of pick up on it immediately and not be happy with it. The Kevin's satisfies everybody. So the Kevin's kind of heat and eat. You have the protein and then you have the sauce in a separate pouch and you combine them in your skillet. It's so incredibly easy. So the Kevin's Heat and Eat meals, it's about 32 ounces, 32 ounce serving total for about $14, $15, depending on the brand. So that one is always kind of our go-to in that fridge section. Also there, some easy ones, smoked salmon, jumbo lump crab meat. While those are expensive products, they're at least a better price point at a place like Costco. Still in that fridge section, there's a noodle. It's called Healthy Noodle. It is similar to, if you're familiar with Miracle Noodles or Shirataki noodles. They have, for a serving, basically a half cup serving, it's just 30 calories and 6 grams of carbs, but all the carbs are fiber. So it's essentially 0 carbs, only 30 calories. It's something that if you opened the package and you were just going to eat it as pasta, I don't know anyone who would like it just as is out of the package. It's a really neutral, there's like no taste to it. It's really neutral. It sort of just gives the texture of pasta. And the type of texture that I actually feel like it's closest to is something like a glass noodle. And something like a low carb version of pad thai, I think it works really well. So they're low carb, they're gluten free, they're really low calorie, essentially no carb, like we said. And they also they don't really have much flavor. So cooking it into any sauce is going to be key. So if you're doing a red sauce with like some sort of a lean meat sauce, or you've got Impossible in there, Impossible burger or chicken that's got a marinara, go ahead and put these noodles into that sauce and get it cooked down into there so that it's soaking in really that flavor. Or if you had something like an olive oil or garlic or lemon sauce, cook it down in that. So I wouldn't have these just plain. We're going to want to make sure that you've got them like really, really flavored, really seasoned with whatever that sauce is that normally you might just serve over pasta. Cook these all the way through it. But that could be a really good texture. It gives nice texture. Also, if you were doing something like stir fried chicken and vegetables, with maybe like a little bit of sesame oil and some lower sodium soy sauce or something like that, different seasonings, you could throw this into that stir fry and it would just kind of bulk it up, gives it a little volume. Or like I said, kind of the texture of something like a pad thai or something that you would otherwise use a glass noodle for. I think these healthy noodles, and the brand is just called that, Healthy Noodle, I think that they can be a nice stand-in. Egg bites. Okay, if you've seen something like the egg bites that were first at Starbucks, now they're at coffee shops like PJ's, and they're a real good go-to for like a fast cafe type of a snack or breakfast. Like I said, these coffee shop things. They have also these egg bites, very, very similar at Costco. The brand that they have is called Three Bridges. There's a spinach and bell pepper that's egg white based. And these are 8 little patties. They come 2 per container. And they're basically sous vide, and then you just heat them up. And so it's 8 little egg bites, 4 little packages of 2, and it's basically $11. And so these are something that are just a really fast go-to if you're, always racing out the door for breakfast, or if your intent is to stop by a place and pick them up, but then maybe you run out of time. And then also just the price point is helpful there. There's a tortilla that I really like. The brand is called Siete, and Siete. They have an almond flour tortilla. I see it at regular grocery stores. I see it at Whole Foods type stores. Of course, the price point is better at Costco. It's a 20 pack for about $11.89. So the reason I like it is it's lower carb, it's almond flour. It does have like a tapioca starch and a little bit of other filler starches, but still really lower calorie, lower carb. So for someone who's looking for that wrap, but wants something that's going to kind of have a minimal influence on glucose levels, this works well. I mentioned before when I've talked about electrolytes, and I talked about actually my pre-workout fuel source, oddly is this. It actually works really well when I use the continuous glucose meter and kind of looked at how do my blood sugars respond to different foods before an intense workout. And in spite of the fact that this is lower carb, for me, this almond flour wrap with cheese, a slice of, say, provolone melted on it, works really well as a pre-workout snack to just keep my energy up, my blood sugars up throughout and sustain throughout that workout. So while I see them at regular grocery stores, I also like the fact that the price point is really nice at Costco. Still in that refrigerated section, y'all. There's a fajita chicken kit. It's by a brand called Frontera. And it's also, lower carb. It's 10 grams carb and 4 of those are fiber, 26 protein. And it's basically just seasoned chicken with some roasted peppers, onions, the fajita sauce. The sodium on this is, on all of these foods, the sodium varies, but on this one it's 530 milligrams of sodium. So a little bit high. It's not crazy high, but it's also not a low sodium product. So again, if someone is really watching their salt, it might be something to be mindful of. But this is similar price point to the Kevin's. A little bit higher. It's $18 for about a 32-ounce serving of it, whereas Kevin's is about $14, $15. But these fajita chicken kits, to me, it seems pretty easy to get the chicken, get the peppers, onions, and cook it in the skillet. But the ease of also having it already sliced, ready, and having that sauce there, can be a true benefit. Also in that refrigerated space, I really like, there's kimchi. If you're not familiar with kimchi, it's basically like a fermented cabbage. And you'll see this often on, Korean dishes. The reason I like it is it's super flavorful. It's fermented, so it is a probiotic-rich food. And for that reason, you're going to see it specifically in the refrigerated section here. So it's something that's just, it's low in everything, low in calories, low in carbs. It does have a decent bit of sodium, about 200 milligrams per ounce. So again, for someone could use the extra salt, if you're sweating at summertime here as we're recording this episode, it's crazy humid and hot here in New Orleans. So adding something like that not only gives you the probiotics of being that fermented food, but also would give you a little dose of sodium. Y'all have heard me talk about bitchin' sauce before, and that's just what it's called, bitchin' sauce. There's different varieties of it. There's the original, the chipotle, there's the cilantro, and currently Costco has the bitchin' sauce in a 24-ounce container for $8.99. The only thing I would say there is, sometimes it can be easy just to keep on dipping, but I love this sauce. It's really creamy. It has really great flavor, especially the chipotle variety. It is vegan, although it's not something that you would even think it's vegan. I mentioned it's a creamy dip, but it's basically an almond-based dip. And so bitchin' sauce is something I actually first found when we were like deep quarantine. And I was like, wow, this brings just such happiness. And so it's something that I've always, since then, just kept it in our fridge. And I love when I can find it at Costco as well for that price point. Also in the dip category, so bitchin' sauce, and then hummus. Hummus is another, and also guacamole, that it can be, portion control can be an issue for people. It's easy to just open that whole container of hummus and, again, just keep dipping, or same thing with guacamole. So I like the fact that Costco has little singles for both hummus and for guacamole, and they're both the Kirkland's brand. And so again, little 2 or 2.5 ounces. It's 2.5 ounces of little hummus singles. So little 2.5 ounce containers, and kind of where you peel back the lid and you've got your little single serve container. These are great for kids' lunches. They're great for our own lunches. They're great for someone who does struggle with keeping those portions in check. So the little singles of hummus, the singles of guacamole, and then also Holy Guacamole brand, they have what's just plain smashed avocado. And these are in little 2-ounce containers with a little peel back lid. So if you're going to do, avocado toast is everywhere and you want to get creative with it, but you don't do it that often. And if you're buying the avocados, either you're afraid they're going to go bad, or, you cut one in half and then the other, it's a commitment maybe to have the whole avocado. So I love that these are just little 2-ounce portions. It's already smashed and there's no seasoning or anything added to it. It's just pure avocado. So you can be as creative as you want with that. So all of those, the smashed avocado, the hummus singles, the guacamole singles, all can be great additions to a lunch. Also, when we're talking just things on the go, those egg bites, those can be great. They can work in a lunch. They can also be great for breakfast on the go. And then kind of similar in that vein is hard-boiled eggs. And that's one that they're in the dairy space, kind of where they have the milk and half and stuff. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, well, how hard is it to boil an egg? And it's not hard, but a lot of times we're just not doing it. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that, you know, you can go to, let's just say, a convenience store, and at the register, they're selling hard-boiled eggs for $1. I mean, we're certainly not paying $12 a dozen for fresh eggs, but, you know, we're paying $1 per egg or whatever to have them already boiled for us. It can be like really expensive depending on like where we're seeing them because we're paying for the convenience. So clearly we're not all boiling our own eggs. So hard-boiled eggs are something that you can find like already done for us in like a big box at Costco. I would say we were actually debating like, do we get it? You know, Brad's like, I like hard-boiled eggs. However, it's like 16 little 2-packs. So basically 32 eggs. And we were like, that's a lot of eggs. And then being mindful of the expiration on that, of course. So all of that is in the refrigerated section so far. We've just in those first few little like kind of short aisles where the case is all open. You don't have to open the door. You just kind of reach into the refrigerated section. So then as you get into the freezer space, there's so much on the aisle where there's like frozen berries and fruits and vegetables. So the freezer section, we always go there for berries, you know, strawberries, blueberries, they're raspberries, cherries. They're fantastic for smoothies. The mango chunks, the pineapple chunks, the avocado. So all of those are really easy ways to mix and match the different types of fruits, berries. So you're getting the different nutrients from each of those different fruits, and also just mixing up the flavor profiles there. So I love these to go in smoothies. I also love using frozen fruit. You can puree it and add Greek yogurt. Specifically, I'd say the low-fat Greek yogurt or even full-fat plain Greek yogurt, and make little homemade popsicles with it. And so there's so many things that we can do. You can also just kind of let it thaw, come to room temperature, and put that over your yogurt or put it over cottage cheese or something like that. So, of course, all the fruits, all the frozen vegetables, there's Brussels that are in there. There's Brussels that are already cut in half, making it easier for you. Rice, cauliflower stir-fry rice in there. So many different ways that we can just have vegetables and fruits made really convenient for us, just kind of in that first section where it's just really simple stuff. There's also, of course, all types of lean proteins, fish, different things, if that sort of thing like calls you. Also in that freezer section, there's different types of lower carb ice cream, or I saw some like keto popsicles the other day. The keto ones, I can't remember exactly what the brand was, and I didn't snap a photo of it because the first ingredient was just, you know, heavy cream, and the calories, the saturated fat were just really high. And so again, it's marketed to someone who's doing keto very strictly, but there was a lot of other options that I would recommend even more than that. And so one that I saw that stood out to me a bit is one called Keto Cups. They spell cups with a K, but it's little single serve cups of ice cream. There was 4 little vanilla cups and 4 chocolate ones that were in there. And each of the little cups, sort of like you would have Bluebell ice cream cups that you would have like at a kid's birthday, same kind of concept here. And so they were called Keto Cups, little ice cream cups, 120 calories, about 7 saturated fat, 0 added sugar. And they're made with real cream, but they're also made with plant-based sweeteners and no artificial sweeteners. So I liked that about it. What it also say, you're going to hear me talk about a few things as we're going forward that they have keto in the name. The fact that it's marketed as keto doesn't necessarily make it healthy. And, you know, so it's just like we said at the beginning of this, there's so many things that are marketed to us as if they're good for us. And then once we start to kind of dig in a little deeper, we're like, not so much, you know. So keto is really overused, and there's no definition or no standard for something to be called keto. So a lot of times you may see something called keto friendly or keto approved or something like that. And then when you look at it, it's like, wow, it's actually still, you know, pretty high carb in there. So kind of disclaimer on that. The reason that a lot of these are in here, these keto kind of branded products that you'll hear me talking about, it's not about the fact that they're keto, but it's about, well, what does that mean that they don't have? So, for example, there is a keto lasagna in that freezer section. And so the keto lasagna is made with cauliflower, what's kind of like a cauliflower tortilla that's layered in there with cauliflower rice, zucchini, mushrooms, some different types of cheeses, the tomato sauce. And it's really delicious. We got some, we tried them. I will say the layers didn't hold up as much as we heated it. So, but it was still like less like a layered lasagna, more like a casserole with the flavors of lasagna, but it was still really good. And my husband, who, like I said, he's not one to just go for something just because it's healthy or something or healthier. He's just, he's a harder critic on some different dishes. And this, he was like, wow, this is a really good, just plain side dish because it's, again, cauliflower rice, zucchini, mushrooms, some cheeses through there, the tomato flavor, tomato sauce through there, tomato puree. So it was really flavorful. And it also happened to just not have the white pasta in there, which also makes it more nutritious that it is just all these veggies with all this good stuff. Interestingly, in that freezer section, there was this keto lasagna, and it's made by the company, the brand is Cali Flour Foods, CALI''FLOUR, Cali Flour Foods, kind of cauliflower foods. And so it's their keto lasagna, hearty vegetable variety. So this was in the freezer section at Costco, right by the Amy's lasagna. And Amy's has been around for years. Amy's gets, a lot of times if someone's in the freezer section, they'll go to that brand because it's perceived as being healthier and better and organic and all of this. And so the Amy's brand, when we compared it, and it's almost the same number of ounces. So when we were looking at serving size to serving size, it wasn't exactly the same, but it was close enough, within just a few grams difference. The Amy's lasagna, which had white pasta and such in there, had 380 calories, whereas that keto, air quote, keto lasagna, the hearty vegetable, had 220. So 380 calories to 220. Amy's had 18 protein, this one had 14. And Amy's had 700 sodium, and this one had 290. The carbs in Amy's were 39, and the net carbs in the keto lasagna was 12. So basically a hair less protein in the keto lasagna, about 1/3 of the carbs, less than half the sodium, and I'm doing the math really quickly, I would say, 1/3 fewer calories as well. The keto lasagna being 220 calories, 14 grams of protein, for some people, that could be sufficient as a lunch. It might be if you were, didn't really eat a big lunch. For me, though, I really like it, as we were saying, almost as a side dish. And it's big enough that if we were going to have it as a side dish, if someone's got a real hearty appetite, you would just eat that whole thing. It's not giant, but it's big enough that if it was going to be sort of your vegetable, you could split it with someone. So if you're going to have your protein at home and then split this little lasagna as your side dish, or if you were going to have just kind of if you're one that does a lot of small meals or snacks through the day, this could serve as maybe one standalone. So you're going to hear a trend through the next few. The trend is not going to be any surprise to y'all. It's cauliflower. I mean, it's like taken over. The next one that we bought it, we tried it, we love it. It is called baked cauli and cheese. So basically a cauliflower and cheese. It was one that, how they're sampling out at Costco, and we love that we're back to having Costco samples because that's like half the pleasure of going to Costco is being able to stop at all the stations where their team is, sampling out all these different interesting products that are on the shelves that you're like, I don't know if I want to commit and buy that much of it. So when we're able to taste it, it's like, it's such a great sales tool on their end. And it's also fun for us to be able to try these different foods. And I thought it was interesting with COVID, I guess, restrictions now. The one when I was trying this cauli and cheese, it's basically almost like a mac and cheese type texture. And they still had the plexiglass. She makes some and she wasn't able to hand it to me. She was very specific that she had to put it on the tray and slide it to the front and then let go. And then I could pick it up and try it. So I was happy to see that she was preparing that one for samples as we passed by. And I was like, do you like it? What do you think? What's been the feedback? And she said, she's like, I really like it. She was like, and kids are liking it. They're eating it, as if it's, or thinking that it's mac and cheese. And so it's basically, they call it baked cauli and cheese on the front, as we said. So number one, cauliflower being that trend that we're seeing everywhere. And then number two, keto. It says keto friendly, like really big under there. And basically, they're saying that because it's basically just cauliflower, milk, different cheeses, a little bit of starch in there, but really a small amount. And so the stats are 140 calories in a serving, about 7 protein, 6 carbs, one of that's fiber. The saturated fat is 6, and that's because of the cheese, of course, through there. The drawback, I would say, depending on who we're talking about, is sodium, 380 milligrams. And the reason I say depending on who we're talking about is right now, I mentioned, we're here in New Orleans and it's so humid and hot right now in June as we're recording this. And so if you're outside for any length of time, even if you're going for a walk, I was talking to our neighbor across the street and, he's an older guy, probably late 70s or in his 70s. And he had gone for a walk the evening before. And I'm seeing him getting in his car, driving to work the next morning. He's like, I'm still wiped out. I just was, I was sweat so much. I just can't catch up. In those types of occasions, we often need not just fluids, but as we just talked, just in our recent podcast, you can scroll back. I believe it's just one episode back. You'll hear it about electrolytes. So when we're talking about electrolytes, that we're losing loads of these when we're sweating heavily in summertime heat, electrolytes, the main one that we're losing in our sweat is sodium. So if someone is really having to watch their sodium, 380 milligrams for a side dish of a cauliflower and cheese pasta, maybe not so great. But for someone who could use the extra salt for that replenishment, if you're losing that sweat and it's just humid and you feel like you can't keep up, not a bad thing there. So the baked cauli and cheese, it's actually so good that for Father's Day coming up, as I'm recording this, as you hear it, it'll be right after Father's Day. But as I'm recording it, it's right before Father's Day. And Brad is going to be grilling steaks for my dad, for our family in Baton Rouge. And my sister and I were kind of like plotting out what the menu would be, that she and I are kind of pulling it together. Of course, Brad's cooking the steaks. So she and I are like, what else we're going to have along with it? And I was like, oh my gosh, Christy, like you've got to get, she's doing the Costco run for a few things for it. So she's going to pick up some of this cauliflower and cheese, and that's actually going to be one of the side dishes that we'll have with the steak. So it's that good that we're like layering it into kind of a quick preparation thing as one of the side dishes that we'll do. So anyway, that's one. That's another in the freezer section. So that keto lasagna we talked about, that's really more of a casserole than a lasagna, but has those really great flavors of a lasagna. And when compared to just a quote healthy brand like Amy's, the calories are so much less. The sodium is so much less. The carbs are so much less. Yet still all the nutritious vegetables and all that in there. The baked cauli and cheese, it's basically just a way to make cauliflower really even more tasty. So again, kids, if they are a mac and cheese kind of a kid, try this. It can be just a way to, layer in another vegetable. There's also cauliflower bowls, and it is a chicken base. It's a polo asado cauliflower bowl, and this is one that has cilantro, lime, riced cauliflower, and also black beans, some roasted corn. And so this is, and it's little single serve bowls that are, again, it's in the freezer section, and this is something that's got 4 bowls in each box that you would buy. And the sodium's moderate, about 560. The protein's great, 27. Again, really just very simple ingredients here. Interesting too, I think that we'll probably see more of this coming up, but it advertises really big on the front of the packaging that it is in a compostable plant-based fiber bowl. So I think that that's also interesting when we're looking at, like we said earlier, the quality and the standards of a lot of the different products that we'll see at Costco. There's still ample plastics throughout there, but I think it's interesting that brands that they bring in are starting to do things like this. The compostable plant-based bowl that this cauliflower bowl is actually served in. So in that freezer section, all the different fruits, vegetables, that we talked about that are just pretty standard, straightforward. There's little keto cups for ice cream as that sweet treat. And then cauliflowers hitting all three of these side dishes. Or the cauliflower bowl could be a main entree. It also could be something that you would split as a side dish. Same with that keto lasagna. And then we've got our baked cauliflower and cheese. There's also a couple of things that you could do as breakfast and or snack. So there's some little spinach egg white frittatas, similar to the egg bites that we talked about that are in the refrigerated section. There's a freezer section version of these. The brand is called Veggies Made Great, and it is a spinach and egg white frittata. And then there's also in the freezer section these acai bowls. The acai bowls, it's ACAI. It's kind of hard to understand it as I'm saying it if you're not seeing it. But acai bowls, acai is a very tart fruit. And so a lot of times when I see an acai bowl, I know that it probably has a lot of sugar in it to make it more sweet than tart. And what I was impressed with about this particular one, the brand is called the Tattooed Chef. What I was impressed with is that the actual bowl itself with all the acai puree, there's no sugar added in that puree. So it's the acai puree, which is again that really it's a really antioxidant rich fruit. And you're not going to see it fresh. It's going to typically be in a freezer section in its frozen form, or you'll find it as a puree. In this case, there's no added sugar in that base. It's the acai puree, and then also bananas, strawberries, blueberries, some coconut milk. And so that kind of gives it a creaminess. It's kind of like an icy sorbet in there. And then there's a topping that is in little separate packets. And that topping is granola with some shredded coconut. And in that little topping, it's only 2 grams added sugar. And that would be optional if you added that or not. So the entire little bowl only has 100 calories before you put the topping on it. If you put the granola topping, it's 180. The protein is really low. So I wouldn't have this as something like a breakfast or a standalone snack because it just doesn't have the protein to really carry us. But I would look at it more as like a sweet treat. So if you were going to have it as dessert after a meal, it would be a really nutrient-rich dessert to incorporate. So still taking y'all with me through the journey there. We've gotten, we go through the produce section, which is pretty obvious. The seafood section, obvious. We've hit the fridge area. We've hit the freezer area. Now we're in that shelf-stable space, the stuff that's just kind of like pantry things on the shelf, the normal shelves. Of course, y'all know, if you've heard me talk before, I love the pink Himalayan sea salt kettle chips at Costco. And so as soon as you come out of the freezer section and you're going into like the regular pantry section, kind of, I guess, dry goods, I call it shelf stable, but some people think it's strange that I say shelf stable, but I think that's like the food science brain in that reference. But so of course, as we're swinging out through there, we'll pick up some of those if we need them. Also in that kind of little snacky chip space, there's several really good things. There's Wisps, the WHISPS, Wisps. And then there's also Parm Crisp. And both of those, 2 different brands, Wisps and Parm Crisp. And they're basically just cheese that is crisped up into a little cracker or a chip. And there's different varieties. Currently, what I picked up is the cheddar cheese wisps. And then on the Parm Crisp, what they have, Parm Crisp, meaning like Parmesan crisp, but they're crispy like a little chip or cracker. They have the everything seasoning, sort of like the everything bagel seasoning on those. Also, they have at Costco some avocado crisp, and these are just fascinating to me. So it's basically, imagine it's sort of like a freeze-dried avocado, and then they have a little bit of a chili lime seasoning on them. So the brand is called Branch Out, and they're in a package. If you've ever seen the cauliflower bites by Rhythm Foods, which they also have at Costco, also on my list, they're sort of like a freeze-dried cauliflower that's crunchy like a chip. This is the similar type of approach with avocados. And there's different flavors or varieties that brand makes, but what Costco currently has is their chili lime version. And it's basically just avocados and the seasoning mix. And they're delicious. It's just a fantastic little snack. So as I mentioned on the snack type things, or I guess salty, kind of salty, crunchy type things, we love the sea salt Himalayan kettle chips, but those are not what we would say would be included in our top nutritious finds. They're just one of my top favorite finds. The top nutritious, like, you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck nutritionally for that salty crunch, is the Parm crisps, which is the little cheese crisp, the Wisps, which is the other brand of cheese crisp, the avocado, kind of freeze-dried little crisp that we talked about, and then the Rhythm Foods organic little cauliflower bites, which are kind of crunchy like a chip. So all of those are some really nice go-to options for something that's kind of that snacky, crunchy, savory thing. In the breakfast or snack category, kind of transitioning there, different types of nut butters. There's almond butter, and it's the Kirkland brand almond butter, which is, just a really great, simple, pure product. There's also one called Nutso. It's Nuttzo, and it is a nut-free seed butter. So it's got all these different types of seeds in there. The texture of it, the crunch is just like it's really spectacular. And the price point on it at Costco is better than what you would find at a regular store. Also kind of in that space, if we're thinking, snacks or breakfast, is Catalina Crunch. If you're not familiar with this, the Catalina Crunch has several different, types of products. They have cookies, they have trail mixes now, but the Catalina Crunch has a cereal. It's also, as we talked about earlier, it's on the front label, it says keto-friendly cereal. It's 11 grams of protein per serving, 9 grams of fiber per serving. And so a half cup of the cereal has 110 calories. It has 9 fiber, 11 protein. It has 14 total carbs, but you subtract the fiber, so it really leaves us with 5 net carbs. So it's basically giving us 5 net carbs, 9 fiber, 11 protein, which is really fantastic. It happens to be gluten-free and grain-free as well. And the variety currently at Costco now is the cinnamon toast flavor of that. So that's one that I love. Another is Kodiak cakes, and this is their flapjack and waffle mix. And the Kodiak cakes it's 100% whole grain. It is higher protein, so a serving of them has 14 grams of protein, 30 carbs, and 5 of that's fiber. So they're just a nice, they're made with 100% whole grain wheat flour. They also they're a blend of whole grain wheat and whole grain oat flour. They also have added protein, 2 sources. One is a wheat protein, one is a whey protein, and they have a milk protein concentrate. So, if someone needs dairy-free or gluten-free, this isn't it. But if you're looking for making pancakes at home or waffles at home on the weekend, and you want something that's whole grain and higher protein, the Kodiak Power Cakes are fantastic. In the same conversation of maybe snacks or breakfast, Vital Proteins Collagen. We've talked about collagen before on this podcast, and the Vital Proteins, the price point at Costco is just really great. And a lot of times they have it on sale for even a steeper discount. And that can work in if you're doing an iced coffee in the morning, if you're blending a smoothie for breakfast, that can be your protein source. 2 scoops of it gives you 20 grams of protein. So adding something like that collagen powder can work as, adding that boost of protein to your breakfast or snack, especially some of the easiest ways I think that to be consistent with it is in coffee or iced coffee or a smoothie. Although there's so many other ways we can do it, that's just sort of, some of the go-tos. So if that's something that's part of your usual routine for breakfast or a snack, we could throw the collagen in there. Also, so many options for protein powders and ready-to-drink protein shakes. Orgain is the brand that you'll see most often at Costco. And so they have the ready-to-drink shakes and also the powders. And for the ready-to-drink shakes, there will be a whey-based, basically a milk protein-based, or a plant protein-based. Same thing with their protein powders. They offer a milk protein or a plant protein. Sometimes you'll see varieties that have superfoods in there, and not just Orgain, but just in protein powders in general, which I think I'm going to do another episode in the future soon on just protein powders. I've had some requests for that. So as you're listening to this, if you're like, ooh, wait, I want to get your take on this one, send it my way and I'll make sure to include it in the upcoming podcast. So if you see some that do say superfoods in there, be aware that a lot of times they may have, it could be different greens, it could be different extracts of plants, vegetables, fruits that can add antioxidants essentially and nutrients to that protein powder. You can also pick up on the flavor of it a lot of times. So if you're using that protein powder and you're making it, putting it into your coffee or you're making it into a smoothie, you may be fine with it in a smoothie if it's kind of got those superfoods and the extra, powdered greens and different extracts in there from your kind of nutrient-rich vegetables. You may be fine with it in that smoothie, but you may not be so great with it in your coffee. So just be aware of kind of what you're using it for if you're going to maybe pick up on the flavors of that. So the salty, savory snacks we talked about already, the things for breakfast and snack type things, the different types of nut butters and seed butters, the Nutso, the Catalina Crunch breakfast cereal. It's a dry cereal, I should say. And then also the Kodiak Power Cakes for that high protein, whole grain pancake or waffle. And then collagen powder, the Orgain protein powder, which we can get plant or milk based. And then also the Orgain ready to drink shakes, plant or milk based. And then rounding it out. So I sort of jumped around in those aisles a little bit because I wanted to kind of talk breakfast and snack things first. There's a few others that I would say, I'm excited to see there. One is called Right Rice, and it is their creamy Parmesan style risotto. Right Rice is basically like if you're familiar with banza or something like a chickpea pasta, think that, but rice instead. And so it's not necessarily low carb or low calorie, but it's a lot more fiber than regular rice and a lot more protein than regular rice. And this is in the regular shelf stable kind of pantry section. It's dry. It's not already cooked or prepared. So you would then prepare it, just like you would the banza pasta or regular rice. So you would be adding water. It's basically like buying dry rice and then you would cook it. Except in this case, it is the chickpea base with its chickpea flour, some pea fiber, a little bit of seasonings, kind of some spices and seasonings in there that give it kind of that savory Italian style risotto feel. So this is one that as another side dish, it isn't the ready to eat kind of microwavable things that we talked about from that freezer section or refrigerated section. It's one that's basically, it's the equivalent of buying dry rice. It's just a lot higher fiber and more protein. The last two things I would say is condiments, things that we can just like easily just put a little drizzle on something and add some really good flavor. One is Hanley's. We've actually also had Rich Hanley, the owner and founder of Hanley's salad dressing company, on this podcast. And he did a behind the brand interview with us, and they are just an incredible brand, great values. The pride and the quality of ingredients that they put into their products is incredible. So they are actually based out of Baton Rouge. So they're a local brand based here in South Louisiana, but their product is in all types of stores. It's in Costco, as we're talking about. I've also seen it in Walmart. So they have really great distribution. Why I love them is that they have such a high priority on quality ingredients. In the interview, Rich Hanley shared that, they'll kind of run the numbers on things, and they first do R&D, research and development, and they're trying different recipes and they're experimenting with new varieties of dressing. And then as they, taste it and start to kind of land on what a new recipe may be, before they get too far in, he's running the nutritional numbers on it. And he's looking at what's the sugar, what's the added sugar, what's the sodium, because so many times in things like salad dressing, the sodium is just insane. And it's not something that maybe even tastes that salty. It can even be a sweet tasting dressing, but wow, it's layering in so much salt that we're not even realizing as we might be being mindful of other sources of sodium. So anyway, Hanley's brand, his entire line of salad dressings, I love. And his Sensation salad dressing is available at Costco. It's in like a little two bottle package. If you're not familiar with Sensation, I kind of compare it. It's almost like a Caesar vinaigrette, but it's not that. It also has like, it's garlicky and Parmesan-y. It's something that the Sensation type of dressing, as far as I know, and my understanding is that it originated in Baton Rouge. And I'm from Baton Rouge originally. Growing up, Sensation salad just was a thing. It was like a thing on menus. Restaurants would just offer a Sensation salad, just like you would see a Caesar salad as a standard. And that Sensation salad was the original dressing that Hanley's created. And they couldn't find it in stores. And they were like, wow, we love it when we go out to restaurants. We can't find it in stores. So they decided, let's make it. And then that sort of was the genesis, and the brand, the Hanley's brand, evolved beyond that to all types of varieties. So background on Sensation dressing. It's delicious. It's super versatile. And we can find that at Costco. And then there's another brand, Primal Kitchen, that has just a really wide array of different types of sauces, dressings, all types of condiments. And so Primal Kitchen and regular stores, or I would say like Whole Foods type stores, my preference is Primal Kitchen for barbecue sauce, for teriyaki sauce, for mayonnaise, all of the different brands, because they're really simple ingredients. They keep the sodium in check. They don't have any added sugar. It's just really impressive how they create these really flavorful condiments without the typical salt and sugar that most brands use. And so at Costco, you can find their mayonnaise. It's the avocado mayonnaise, which tastes really good. It's just avocado oil, so it doesn't taste like avocados. It's one that my husband was really resistant. He was like, God, Molly, just buy regular mayonnaise. And he was really like resistant because he thought it was going to just, ruin the quality of the sandwich he's going to make. And then he tried it and he was like, all right, this is actually really delicious. So Primal Kitchen, they have a mayonnaise at Costco. They also have a buffalo sauce, and they have a Caesar dressing. So that's another brand that just keep your eye out for it. That's got really great condiments across the board, and they have those available at Costco. And then this is just a really simple one. This is the one that I'm going to end it on. It may not seem that exciting, but to me, I'm just so happy that it came out. It's basically a cooking spray, and it's been around for a while at Costco. It's just extra virgin olive oil in a spray, but it doesn't have the propellant gases. So it's like a PAM, but without anything in it. It's only olive oil, and it has a little sprayer that sprays really well. It sprays as well as PAM does. Because if you've had the olive oil containers that you put your own oil into, and it's sort of like a vacuum pump, and then you're spritzing it. I don't know about y'all, but every one I've had has kind of clogged up and just, gone kaput within a couple of months. And so this one, they come in a 2-pack at Costco. So we always have this, and this is sort of our go-to. So instead of PAM, when we want to just have that spray of a coating of a cooking spray, the brand is Maeva, Maeva, and it's the organic extra olive oil. Basically, it's like it's like a natural version of a PAM type cooking spray. Oh, y'all, I almost forgot. We're actually ending on a more exciting note than cooking spray. High key cookies. I talked about these a couple months back. Maybe it was around Christmas this past year when I did a podcast with Carolyn Ketchum. She is the brilliant low carb, gluten-free baker. And we did a podcast on her tips for baking, coming out with a good result of, I wouldn't say the perfect gluten-free cookie, because she's quick to say, there's different things you're going to have to kind of compromise on if you're going to adjust your favorite recipes to be gluten-free. But she walks us through the pitfalls, I would say, of like when you're baking with gluten-free, low-carb ingredients and trying to make cookies, especially let's just say holiday cookies, what are some of the pitfalls to be aware of and how can we sidestep them? And at the end of that podcast, we did a taste test of several different, gluten-free, lower carb cookies, and High Key was one of them. And High Key, it's HIGHKEY, just like the opposite of low key. And at what they currently have at Costco, and they've had them there for a while, so fingers crossed they keep them. It's these little mini cookies, and they're like little mini chocolate chip cookies. And a serving has just 1 gram of net carbs. I mentioned before that I had used a continuous glucose meter for a while. The one I use is Nutritious. They had sponsored this podcast a few months back, so I had the opportunity to try it. And you put it into your arm. It is in real time gauging and measuring and tracking our glucose levels. And so you can keep a food log. You can see what you eat through the day, and you can see the direct correlation in real time what is happening with your glucose levels. So the little sensor that goes into the back of your arm syncs with your iPhone, and you can just kind of immediately see, what am I eating and what happens to my glucose. And what I found was that with most of the other little cookies that she and I tried, they were low sugar and all of that. I mean, and relatively low carb. And if I had even just 2 of them, like a little cookies and a 2 cookie serving, and, for hours and going to bed through the night, my glucose levels would be elevated in like the warning range. It would kind of give you the yellow, like warning range. And I was like, wow, I'm really sensitive to this. And it's not good to have the glucose levels running so high while I'm sleeping. The high key of all the different ones we tried is the only one that had a neutral. It had no effect on glucose levels. And so now if I do want something sweet at night, after dinner, which is, a lot of times like we're not hungry physically, but we kind of want a little something. For me, this is my go-to for that reason, because I know that I'll have a handful of these, and I tested over and over and over with it. And I was like, wow, it was essentially like as if I just had a piece of cheese. There was like it was just a steady state influence on glucose levels. So these high key cookies, they are almond flour based. They are sweetened with natural plant-based sweeteners. The chocolate in them is unsweetened chocolate. So a serving, which is like 7 little mini cookies, is it's only 1 gram net carbs. So you'll see 12 grams total carbs, but by the time you subtract the fiber and then you subtract those plant-based sweeteners, it's only 1 net carb, or what would be called 1 gram of impact carbs. So they're also sold at other stores, but the bags are pretty small, and I feel like it's so easy to go through them so quickly. The price point there, and there's only a couple of servings in there, whereas the Costco size bag has 12 servings in it. And so that's sort of my go-to. So y'all, it was an hour that we've been talking so far of Costco finds. But as I said, there's just so many things there. Costco makes it really, and they don't even know we're doing this podcast, by the way. We're not being like sponsored or supported by Costco to do this, but they do just make it so easy for us to have nutritious, convenient foods. Some of the foods we're buying there, of course, are going to be, you're cooking it from scratch. And then they have all these things in that fridge and freezer section that are sort of ready prep. And so whether we want to put a little bit of time into that food preparation, or we want something that we can really just kind of pull together on the fly, they've got all these different solutions. So I know there's going to be other things that you love at Costco that I've missed, and share them with me. I always want to hear. I learn from y'all. You give me so many ideas. And if you try some of these foods and you try some of these new products that we're talking about, I want to hear about it as well. Let me know what you think. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.